Welcome to Muslim Apologetics Australia. In this video, we're going to demonstrate to you on how to identify a white supremacist or a potential terrorist. As you know, white supremacy is on the rise. It is growing day by day, and we need to raise awareness and educate those because, let's face it, the intelligence agencies are very slow to react to this. I'm not undermining their work. I'm just saying that they are far behind trying to tackle white radicalism compared to Muslim extremism. And the reason why I say that is because we've invested much more time and resources in combating terrorism coming from predominantly Muslim countries or Muslim nations, or Muslims in particular living in the West. And so we've failed to address how to combat white terrorism and how to counter those potential risks within our society. And so there is a slow shift. I'm not saying there isn't. There is, of course, but it needs to get much quicker. And so I hope that you guys can actually share this video with friends or folks who are in the intelligence services, and so we can actually help identify these people, and so we can raise awareness and take these things seriously. I mean, think about it for a moment. Brenton Tarrant, why wasn't he on the radar? Why? He had a gun license. He was going to a shooting club. There was a lot of information about him on his Facebook account. The police and the intelligence agencies didn't really bother looking into. And so what we had is a person who was radicalized by right-wing groups, people who are anti-Islamic, and this person traveled abroad. He was getting radicalized from God knows who. In Europe, he's traveled to a few countries there. And so this person comes back and says he's going to wage war against Muslims and Islam, and he goes out and massacres 50-odd people. And so we need to raise as much awareness to combat this, because it's a new threat. And so we need to do our utmost best to start campaigning heavily against it. And so they're not really hard to find. You can find them on Facebook. You can find them on Twitter. You could find them on YouTube. They're amongst us. They're living, breathing amongst us. And they're like a ticking time bomb. They could blow up and explode at any time. And so even Brenton Tarrant's family members, they said, "Oh, we never knew he was like that. Oh, that was the last person we'd expect to do something like that." Yeah? And so the parents obviously are naive, and so they let their little children go into the playroom and into the bedroom. And of course, this child grows up, and this youth grows up, and he becomes radicalized. And the parents don't pay much attention because they're probably they're busy in their own world, in their own lives. Couldn't care less what their children are up to. And so they're getting radicalized online, just as Muslim terrorists get radicalized. And so, most of the radicalization takes place online. And so I want to share with you an article that was posted by Sky News Australia. It's a right-wing media platform, and this is where you'll find them. You'll always find the right-wing, the extremists or the radicals, usually part of right-wing papers, say the Murdoch Press, The Australian, Fox News, Sky News Australia, people who like listening to Andrew Bolt, Rita Panahi, Senator Fraser Anning, and, people like Pauline Hanson, and the list goes on. Most of those people who speak against Islam and Muslims. And so an article was posted saying, breaking a counter-terrorism operation is underway in Victoria, where police arrested a man at St. Mary's Anglican Church in North Melbourne about 2:30 p.m. on Friday. And so whenever an article like this published, you'll see straight away in the comments people who are sympathetic to right-wing groups like Senator Fraser Anning or Pauline Hanson, and you'll see them quickly campaigning. So when there's always something negative about Muslims or a potential terrorist who lives amongst us, they're always campaigning very hard below those news feeds saying, oh look, see what we've said about Muslims is true. Now you need to vote for Senator Fraser Anning or you need to vote for Pauline Hanson. And this is what happens in the text. You see that. And so what these right-wing groups do, like most right-wing groups, is that they look at the vulnerability of human beings. And so it's a fear campaign. And so they use fear in order to win public votes and opinions. And so if there's a boogeyman standing behind you and he's not real, the Islamophobe or the right-wing activists will say, hey, look, there's a boogeyman standing behind you. Vote for Senator Hanson. Right? This is their methodology. If there's a news article with a black man holding a knife, they say, oh, look, there you go. You got to now vote for Senator Hanson. Right? As if white people don't commit crimes. And so they're racist and they use these type of methods. Of course, they're Islamophobic and Muslim phobic. So they use these methods to win their war against what they believe is Islamic or Muslim invasion. So they are at war with Islam and Muslims, basically. So they'll support anyone or anything that is against Islam, or if they feel that their own culture is being threatened by Muslims or Islam, they'll alienate a population, a minority, and make it look bigger than it is, a bigger threat than it is, in order to war against Muslims, to create disunity. As you can see in this comment here, Dan Clark says exactly under this comment, he says, a civil war is imminent. Whose side will you be on? See, there you go, that patriotic statement. Whose side will you be on? A war is starting. So this is all about, bringing back the Christian Crusades, bringing back the Islamic Crusades. Is this what they want? Right? And, here's Dennis Crittenden. He says, vote wise, our last chance for Ausland, no Labour or Greens. He's obviously promoting Pauline Hanson. Go Pauline Hanson and Anning, even Palmer, anyone who wants to save Australia. Stop immigration. See Christine Stanley? So again, that public vote, that public voice, using an isolated case. And this man isn't charged, by the way. All it says, a man was arrested, St. Mary's Anglican Church in North Melbourne at 2:30 p.m. It was just on suspicion. He was charged. And so they use that. There's no conviction. There's no terrorism here. It was just a sting operation to find out what was going on. There's no news, breaking news or updated information to say he was charged with terrorist charges. But you see, this is what they do. So they pick out news articles like this to raise awareness for these. And this isn't something new. I mean, they've done it with Donald Trump. Yeah, how did they get Donald Trump in power? Hey, fear the Mexicans. The Mexicans are taking over. Quick, let's build a wall. Who's going to build this wall? Well, the only person that could do this is Donald Trump. Let's vote Donald Trump because he's anti-Mexican. And public opinion, majority of them were, white people, people who hate immigrants. Yep, he'll win the public vote. And so, and of course, the anti-Islamic sentiments wins you public votes as well. And so Donald Trump got voted in. You see, Warren Collins says, yes, this immigration policy is working a treat. So vote for Fraser Anning. So I went to A Civil War is Imminent. Whose side will you be on? I went into that particular post. And I said, basically, Dan Clark, is that what you want? A war between the crescent and the cross? Would you want your family to be killed in the street? It's funny how they want a war, but are you capable of fighting 1.6 billion Muslims? Are you prepared to have your children orphaned? All I'm seeing is those on the right wanting a war. They say you shouldn't always ask for what you wish for. Keep going by advocating war and you'll be crying in the end. Is this what you basically want? I said to him. You want a war? Do you want to bring back the Crusades? Do you want to bring back the Salahuddin, those wars? Is that what you want? And so a person actually laughed in response, and I basically clicked on the comment, and this person came up, Cyrus Madden. And alarm bells just started ringing straight away. And you could see the image. He basically conceals his real image, as you can see here. That's who he is. And I'm pretty sure the intelligence services could reconfigure the warped image. And so what they do is the white supremacists, you could see they basically conceal their image. They don't like to be known because they know that the intelligence services are watching them very closely and carefully. So they make it difficult. I mean, this person's obviously got something to hide, and so he's concealing his image. So that's the first valuable sign you need to take heed. If you're watching out for a white supremacist, this is one of the first signs you need to look for, whether he's concealing his image. And I'm not saying everyone who conceals their image is a potential white supremacist, but once you start building a case file against them and showing evidence after evidence, then you get to see the broader picture. So let's continue. As we scroll down further on his page, look what we have here. And you see this time and time again. You look at Brenton Tarrant's manifesto where he's constantly referring to the Crusader wars back in history. They always have the crucifix, the Christian cross, the blood red cross, and the Crusades, and they're always living the Crusader wars. It's interesting too because there's Christians out there that say, oh, Brenton Tarrant's got nothing to do with Christianity. He's un-Christian-like. But it's interesting because they're always saying they're un-Christian-like. But they're always, white supremacists are always propagating the Red Cross, the Crusader images, the historical Christian warriors. I mean, I really can't see how this person could be an atheist. I can't see him being other than a Christian. And of course, a Christian may argue and say, well, they're not real true Christians because Christians don't preach, to kill people and do those sorts of things. But again, that's just your pacifist interpretation of Christianity. There are Christians such as Mark Slick. He's a Christian apologist. By the way, he's not a white supremacist. He's just your average evangelical Christian in America. And he says that Christians can go to war at the right circumstances. And You can Google him up, Matt Slick, type in Matt Slick, can Christians go to war? And you can see his article there. And so, although Christians do preach there is something called pacifism, Jesus told to turn the other cheek, and, we should love thy neighbor and so forth. Well, you do have Christians who have an interpretation to actually fight for your nation, fight to defend oneself, fight against oppression. And so if these white supremacists feel that they're being threatened by Islam or Islamic civilization coming to the West, then for them that is basically being threatened, being oppressed, because they think that their Western values or their culture is now being overridden by this Islamization, as they call it. Again, I'm not saying that what they're doing is part of Christianity or the right methodology in Christianity. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we have that in among Muslims. ISIS has hijacked Islam. Yes, there are things that ISIS does that I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There are things that they do which is Islamic. There are things that they do Islamic. But then, of course, there are things that are un-Islamic, where they're exploiting and using an extreme version or an interpretation of Islam in order to kill civilians. They target women and children. They have no remorse. They kill even Muslims. The blood of Muslims for them is halal. And they've got all these other weird practices. But are they Muslim? Yes. Do they pray? Yes, they do pray. Do they fast? I'm pretty sure they do. Do they go to Hajj? I'm pretty sure they go to Hajj. So yes, they're Muslims. They do Islamic practices, but with Islamic practices, they do some, as we call it, innovation, extremism, and bid'ah, and things that are against Islam. So they are sinful Muslims. So when I look at Christians, and when I look at the good Christians amongst our community, I see them, yes, as Christians. Do I look at white fascists and think they're non-Christians? No, I don't. I look at them as Christians too. But can one look at them as sinful Christians? Possibly. And so that's why I think it'd be unfair to say that, we shouldn't just say, they're non-Christian because they believe in white supremacy. No, Jesus said he forgives them for doing evil and sinful things. If they're Christian, then Jesus died for their blood, and he sacrificed himself even for a white supremacist. So I still believe he belongs to a Christian faith. So when a Christian comes up to me and says, they're not Christian, I think is not a fair representation. So I would never say an ISIS terrorist is not a Muslim. If he believes in Allah, if he believes in the Quran, he's still a Muslim. But if he believes in a perverted teaching interpretation of the Quran, then he's in misguidance.
Say source, and then the number shown in the list.
Yes, he's an ignorant person, he's in sin, he's in transgression, and Allah will deal with those people. In fact, Allah will burn them in hellfire for killing innocent women and children and doing all those sorts of things. Of course he will. Unjustifiably, of course. And so we need to set the record straight when it comes to white supremacists. They are Christian. They are. They may be falling into sin and doing some treacherous things. At the end of the day, Jesus died for their sins. They believe in Jesus Christ. And of course, there are certain supremacists, and I've seen this, to be honest, and that's why I'm being absolutely fair as careful as I can. That you actually go through some of their Facebook comments and some of the things that they say, it sounds very anti-religion. It seems as though they mock even Adam and Eve's creation. And so to me, it seems as though that some of these white supremacists are, how can I say this? They don't like to call themselves religious. They don't like to call themselves connected with the church. They like to be identified as more of a lone wolf, as to speak. So is that because some practices in the past has tainted Christianity negatively, that they want to disunite themselves from it? That's possibly true. For example, when you have many of the clergy abuses committed by pedophile priests, many Christians have come out to say, well, they don't believe in an organised religion anymore. But they do still believe in Jesus as their God or their Saviour. And so I think most white supremacists, not all of them, but most white supremacists, I believe, hold the later version to be true, where they like to disunite themselves from a church or a religious body and to be identified more as a liberal Christian that separates himself from the church. And you can see this reflection, for example, Cyrus Madden, the individual that we're looking into, you can see how he's pretty much mocking or making fun of even the creation of Adam and Eve. He's basically ridiculing it or looking at it in a disrespectful fashion. You can see he's shared a picture of Adam and Eve, and it speaks about their private parts and organs, and he's making fun of those. So you can see that they have a disattachment from Scripture or a disattachment from the church, but they still try and identify themselves as Christians. And of course, this happens from the negative approach because of what, again, the pedophile priests have tainted Christianity. And you can see here, he's actually posted a picture of the convicted Australian pedophile priest, Cardinal George Pell, where he's been convicted. So he's put his image there saying he's a predator. And so this is the main cause of their disenfranchisement from the Christian religion, basically. So as we work our way down, you can see sort of this vigilantism, and you could see some iconic figures in the past, and you keep going down, and of course they're very anti-feminist as well. But look how interesting this is. He says, "Let's hope." Deus volt. Have a look. So he's put the image of a crusader here, and he's basically saying soon. And what do we have here? We have the image of the Kaaba, the Muslim congregation of Saudi Arabia, where Muslims go to the pilgrimage. And so this is the central hub of Muslims. And this is what he's interested in. He wants to, as a crusader, take over Saudi Arabia and destroy the Kaaba. And so this is what they want. This is what they're preaching. They're preaching a war against Islam and Christianity. And so these are the types of people that need to be surveillanced. These are your Brenton Tarrant prodigies. Brenton Tarrant put out his manifesto for a reason, because he has he's got followers, and he wants people to follow in their footsteps. And so this is what Brenton Tarrant had on his Facebook account: to take over Turkey, to take over the Muslim world, to make Islam and Christianity go to war. And so we need to be prepared of these individuals who are advocating this sort of violence. And notice he posts a picture of I'm not too sure who this figure is, some sultan, or he says, guys, I think I have a solution. This sentiment here, I think I have a solution, it actually comes from the white policy, the White Australia policy, in where even Senator Fraser Anning said, he spoke about the final solution. And the final solution basically means, we know what that means. It's to massacre the indigenous people of this country. And so they use that same theme against the Muslims. They're basically literally now complicitly calling for the slaughter of Muslims. Again, you could see it always starts from anti-immigration, and you can see Cyrus Madden posting things about that. And, and they really believe in the preservation of their Christian heritage. See, Cyrus Madden probably never goes to church, but they like keeping churches as a historical reference to show that it is a Christian country. So they don't care about the church. They don't care about going to church on Sunday and reading the Bible and getting a moral guide from it to become a good person and to become a person of peace. No, that's now metaphorical. That's just, something, a historical text. What we need to now do is go to war with Muslims. This is what we need to do, because enough is enough. We can't destroy Islam. We can't propagate against Islam. We can't manipulate Islam. We can't critique and refute Islam. So the final solution is now to wipe Muslims out, and this is basically their agenda. And so he feels crap that Notre Dame was on fire in Paris. He says, well, that's crap, as you can see. I bet he never said it was crap that a Muslim mosque was shot, right? But it's crap when a Christian church was caught on fire. Of course, we hope that, the Christians can, where of course it's sad that, their place of worship got burnt down for the Christians. And we don't like to wish evil upon a person. And so, even in Islam, we are taught that a Christian can have his church. He can worship his God in his church. And so that's part of our faith. And I've done plenty of videos on this, and I can put a hyperlink below this video, and you can see where even some Christian critics are trying to misinterpret the Quran to say, oh, Islam is against churches and Islam is against it. You can see my video refuting this. And so, again, he's feeling... Now look at this. He puts a Nazi symbol here. Nazis clarify they're only calling for democratic Nazism. Okay, see, Nazism has been unpopular for a very long time because of what Hitler done to the Jews. And so what Nazis are now doing is trying to revive Nazism, but they're trying to bring a more washed down version, perhaps like a taqiyya version of Nazism to fool the people, to say, oh, look, we're now preaching a democratic version of Nazism, and they have their certain protocols, but deep down what they're trying to bring is fascism and trying to bring racism and white supremacism back to light. So they'll continue to put up these flags and bring people back to fascism and Nazism and anti-Semitism as well. They're not free from this. And this is why that white fascist Dylan Roof, who was, again, a neo-Nazi sympathizer, he went and killed his own brethren in the Christian faith because they belonged to a black church and not a white church. So went in there and shot black people. So, it's interesting because when they say, oh, look, we white fascists, or they don't call themselves fascists, but we, Westerners, in the name of white people, we're not there. We're just a reaction to Islam and Muslims. We're anti-immigration. We've had enough of immigrants coming to our country and spreading their criminality and, taking our jobs and, yada, yada, yada. But then you have a look at their history and they're killing black people. They're, who aren't even Muslim, who are from a Christian faith. They're even killing Jews. They're even targeting Sikhs because Sikhs dress different from Westerners. And so Muslims are not the only target. So it's not this, oh, we're anti-Muslim, Yes, Islam and Muslims are on their number one priority list. But after they've dealt with Islam and Muslims, who are they going to turn to next? They're going to turn to anyone else that looks different from them, whether it be the Christian Africans, it could be the Indians, the Hindus. So they won't give up until they make, or if any other race threatens the white superiority, the white person, basically. And so when that position of authority is threatened, then you're basically the next target. It's interesting because they always talk about, oh, Islam trying to invade the West, and they're all about world domination and trying to control our values and so what. But then but it's them who don't want to live on the same land, or whether it's on a separate land. They don't want to coexist. You could have your Islam, we could have our Christianity. No, it's not that. They don't want that. They want Christian, to supreme rule over all, the white ideology to rule over everything and anything possible. Again, he's appealing to his white heritage. He's basically making fun of those who say racism is never a joke, and then he says F white people. So he's trying to basically say, look at the double standards. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can see he's appealing to. He's always appealing to his white heritage. And of course, it's always interesting because Tommy Robinson always pops up on one of their Facebook pages. He's always there. I mean, if Tommy Robinson is not on a white supremacist Facebook page or his own personal page, then there's something right. You could classify that person as a non-fascist, right? So he always pops up, as you can see here. This is how they will erase you. So Tommy Robinson, he's a hate preacher, and this is why we need to stop people who are hate preachers. You create xenophobia, you create hysteria, you create fear in the community. And so, this is what Brenton Tarrant does. He listens to people like Tommy Robinson. And Brenton Tarrant wasn't just, he didn't sit there and just say, okay, today I'm going to kill Muslims. No, it was many years of propagation, listening to hate preachers. And this is why some people say, oh, look, Tommy Robinson isn't a hate preacher. He never condones violence against Muslims. But when people like Tommy Robinson is saying things like, this is the group of people that will erase you, he is being complicit in advocating violence, because he's saying, look, these Muslims, these ones who are acting all peaceful, living amongst you, they will erase you. They will erase you. They'll finish you off. So that's advocating violence. That's complicit in advocating violence. And there's a video of Tommy Robinson actually saying that. He's saying, look at all these peaceful, you think all these Muslims around you in this neighborhood, you think they're all peaceful? No, they're actually they're your enemy. They're your enemy. He actually said that in one of the videos. And so if that's not advocating violence, what is it then? And this is if a Muslim preacher did that, if a Muslim preacher in Australia said, the kuffar, all of these kuffars in Australia, they're all your enemies. They want to kill you. You need to do something about this now. It's now or never, right? You'd say that Muslim preacher, although he didn't use the word go and kill them, he still was complicit to say, look, that's your enemy there. You need to do something about it. You may not use the word go and kill them, but saying to them you need to do something about it, you're already being complicit in giving them ideas to take arms of some sort. And so these people are complicit in radicalizing people like Brenton Tarrant. And that's why Brenton Tarrant got a lot of support. He was basically the only white terrorist I can think of that was able to kill women and children and kill people who were in the most sacred place of their safe space, of a place of peace, of worship, and they were shot and killed brutally. And Westerners, a lot of Westerners, had the audacity, including Senator Fraser Anning, to justify it in terms of, yes, they did condone the attack, but they were very quick to blame immigration, saying it was because of immigration this happened. It was because the people of New Zealand were concerned and the government would not hear them. And so they complicitly justified the attack. Imagine I said, September 11 attacks, yeah, look, I condemn September 11 attacks. But, the people of Palestine, they went through so much war and oppression by the Israelis. And because America was funding Israel and that Israel was killing these poor Palestinians, and that these Palestinians grew up so much resentment against America, they were fed up because they weren't being heard. So then they jumped on these planes and then they started, bringing down the Twin Towers, killing 3,000 odd people. You'd say, well, hey, although you're condemning September 11, you're justifying it. You're being complicit in this terrorism. And so I can't see the difference between that and Senator Fraser Anning coming out and saying, yeah, I condemn what Brenton Tarrant did, but you know what? The Muslims are guilty also for immigrating to New Zealand. They are guilty as well. Can you imagine? Can you imagine that? And so how is that not being complicit in justifying what Brenton Tarrant did? Now it gets a little bit more creepy here. Cyrus Madden then puts a 60,000 petition made to remove PewDiePie. I actually don't even know who this PewDiePie is, but I just did a little bit of research into him, and PewDiePie happens to be a person that is basically like a commentator to video games. I'm not sure about that, but I think that's what it comes out to be. And so that to me was pretty compelling, for the fact that this person, Cyrus Madden, is interested in video games. Now, of course, that's not really a shock because most Westerners grow up to play video games, and but the fact that he's probably, well, if he's saying, he does say he's born in 1984, which I'm presumably thinking he's now in his late 30s and he's still playing video games. I don't know whether he's married or he's single. I presumably think he's probably still single. And so when you look at the history, that he's interested in PewDiePie, but what gets even more interesting is that this individual, PewDiePie, he commentates on horrific games. I'm not sure whether it's all horrific games, but I've gone into Wikipedia and it mentions that he's a commentator for horrific games. Let's have a look. Okay, you could see it here. Looks like he's from Sweden. And if you just go down to here, just here, it says Kjellberg, I guess his name is. Most noted YouTube content includes his Let's Play styled video game commentaries, particularly of the horror genre. His content has been praised as genuine and unfiltered, but also received as abrasive and in some cases met with controversy. As a result of an early 2017 controversy regarding allegations of anti-Semitism. Wow. So, I mean, where do I start? So what we have here is a person, is a white, you can clearly see is a white supremacist, and is going after, he's listening to this guy, who is particularly interested, is a commentator for horror genre games, horrific games, and who's also an anti-Semite. And so we can see now a clear distinction. Remember what I said a bit earlier. I said how white supremacists, they don't just go after Muslims, they actually go after Jews as well. And that's what Hitler did, right? Hitler went after the Jews. Hitler used to go to the church. He used to pray in front of a cross. You know, many Christians say, well, he's not a Christian. He was just using the Christian faith because the Christian faith was popular back then to win public vote and opinion. So he hid behind Christianity, and so he went out and killed those Jews. But he wasn't really a Christian. And okay, fine. I'll agree with that. No problem. I can agree with it. Because, yes, it happens in the Muslim faith too. Some people hide behind the Islamic religion in order to claim that they're Muslim, in order to win the Muslim majority vote, in order to cause their bloodshed and so forth. Yes, fine. I agree with that. But here we have a person who's clearly claiming to be like Hitler, like a Christian, and hiding behind Christianity, and he's in favor of anti-Semitism. He's obviously, he obviously hates Jews, and so he follows this particular mindset. Again, following anyone, and if you're a fascist, if you're an Islamophobe, if you're a white supremacist, that's your ideology, to fight against Islam, Muslims, Jews, and anyone that's different than you, or anyone that is a threat to you. And so we have that contrast. And then on the other hand, what we have is Brenton Tarrant, and you go through his manifesto, and you go through his history, and you go through how he was raised, and again, violent games. And what we have here is, again, violent games. We have a link between violent games and white supremacy and extremism. Now, you may turn around and say to me, oh, well, you know what? You're speaking nonsense now, because not all violent games make people become evil people. I totally agree with that. No problem. I agree. Not all people who play evil video games or horrific evil games turn out to become people like Brenton Tarrant. But when you look at the lives of white supremacists, they have been exposed to a form of extremism in order to become desensitized, basically. So these violent video games, they actually, some people can control, some people can't. But if a person who's already got a built-up hatred of evil in him, and a built-up hatred of bias and agenda against another group of people, and is already wanting to commit crimes, then those evil video games is only going to entice his cause. But of course, if you're a humanist and you're peace-loving, and now and then you play some violent video games, of course those violent video games are most likely not going to affect your worldview. But if you've already got these bias agendas, if you've already got this hatred of a minority, then now those games that you were playing are now going to affect your life. And so the two go hand in hand. And so, some Westerners even say to me, oh, we can't allow children back from Syria to Australia. No, we can't do that. Why? Because, hang on, they're children. Why can't they come back? Oh, but they were, this is what the Westerners say. They say, but they were exposed to extremism. They saw extremism. So if they come here, they're going to then bring their violence here. They're going to be potential criminals here. So why the double standards now? If we agree that children can be desensitized and become radicalized because of the things that they see in Syria or Iraq, then why is that any different than some of these virtual games that your human conscious mind plays for hours and hours and hours, seeing bloodshed? And some of these games look pretty graphic and realistic. Some of the games out there, there are even, I heard a comment today disputing whether Christchurch was real or fake. Can you believe this? There are people out there disputing whether Christchurch was just a government conspiracy. And they're saying it was just a video game simulation. Do you know how real video games could actually look? So they're saying it's a video game simulation. But then I think to myself, okay, fine, all right, if that is all fake, then, and this is usually coming from those who are right, who are from the far right or the right, or some of the Islamophobes who can't take it that a white person actually committed such a horrific crime. So they say it's just a conspiracy. You know, I find it ironic because they don't go around saying that Sri Lanka was an inside job or a false flag. They say, no, that was true. That really happened. Why? Because the Muslims did it. But when it's a white guy, oh, it's just a conspiracy. We couldn't really see much blood in the videos. We couldn't really see this or we couldn't really see that. As if they're, you know, criminal experts now. Just by watching one footage, they've all become criminal experts. So getting back on point, we see a clear connection again of this sort of behavior. And again, if you are a parent out there, you have a child and, you know, he's left in the room for too long playing these video games. And then from the video games, he's then going on to some content that is disturbing, a misrepresentation of Islam, and he's listening to maybe Tommy Robinson and all these garbage people, then you need to be worried as a parent and you need to really, really look out for him because he could. I'm not saying he would, I'm saying he could become a potential Brenton Tarrant. And then Cyrus Magden then goes against the leftists, of course. And, whoa, look who comes up here. Sky News. So he's part of Sky News. And you can see that they...
Member for the Borat tax, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, so they love listening to, you know, right media, Sky News, of course, and Sky News is now entertained by Rita Panahi, and we know what she's about. But look how interesting this now gets, okay? This even gets even more interesting and actually more confronting. And so Cyrus Madden posts a war against the Turkish army at Vienna. And this is incredible because the inscriptions that Brenton Tarrant had on his weaponry was referring to Vienna. It was referring to the wars of the Turkish army. And so these people are trying to preach because they look at Turkey as a threat now because it is one of the strongest Muslim powers. And so Turkey for them is a threat. They want Turkey back. So they want to relive the Crusades back. And of course, Erdogan's sentiments, and, you know, where he appeals more to the Islamic methodology. And so they want a war now between Islam, President Erdogan, and against the West. And they want this to actually happen. They really crave for this to happen. And so you see Brenton Tarrant promoting this in his manifesto, that they need to take back Constantinople. They need to go to Turkey. They need to invade it. And we have other hate preachers, people like Converted to Islam, or he's now going by the name of Don't Convert to Islam. And so he actually preached to take back Hagia Sophia, to take back what belonged, they believe, to Christians. And so they want to reignite the Crusader Wars. And so Brenton Tarrant actually does this in his manifesto. And so when I'm actually looking through Cyrus Madden's Facebook page, and as you can see it, it's as though we're actually reading Brenton Tarrant's manifesto, right? So this, although I'm laughing, I'm laughing because at the similarities between the two. And so we need the intelligence agencies to really watch these individuals.
attacking. Sobieski is attacking. It's attacking the Polish army. We are saved. We are saved. The Polish king is attacking from Kallenberg. Defend our left flank. What are you waiting for?
And you can see these images that he's putting up, Cyrus Madden. He says, not a phone in sight. Everyone is just living the moment. Wish we could go back. He doesn't want to be on phones anymore. He wants to start killing people. Have a look at this. This is people killing people with swords. Look at that. He wishes to go back to this, and he says he loves it. Have a look at this. Cyrus Madden says he loves this. He loves seeing these images of people sticking swords into one another. This is where their justice comes from. This is how they resolve their issues. Back to the Crusades. Let's just kill all the Muslims. This is what we want to do. Yep, that Brenton Tarrant, where he went into that mosque and started shooting all those worshippers. Yep, this is what we need to do. See? If this isn't Christian radicalization or radicalization in the name of the West, then what is it? If this isn't white supremacists, what is it then? If this isn't the Crusades or wanting to bring back the Crusades, then what is it? So let's finish off by coming up to his Christchurch comments, because we're waiting for that one. Have a look at this. Cyrus of Madden posts about Christchurch. He says, look at this. He says, after Christchurch, we need more blame, not less. So the article is suggesting that after Christchurch, we need to blame. We need more blame, like blaming obviously the white person and for what is done and so forth. And he's basically condemning this. Cyrus Madden is promoting the condemnation of this to say that we're losing our minds over this. Social justice is more important, but let's not lose our effing minds. I'm not sure they know how this is supposed to work. So, if you're showing any sympathy, if you're pointing out that the white person is responsible and that he should be blamed for, no, that's just, we're just going out of our minds. We should be blaming Muslims. And so these people sympathize with Brenton Tarrant and his criminal activity, and these are the next people to hold a gun in their hand to walk in a mosque and shoot more worshippers. Beware of them. And they need to be reported immediately to the intelligence agencies. And we know that these people live amongst us. We know that they're advocating this war with the Muslims. President Erdogan, just look at it. When he made those comments even about the Anzacs, sending them back in caskets, in body bags back to Australia, the man said it in context because Brenton Tarrant's manifesto was advocating violence against Turkey, to war against Turkey, to commit terrorism in Turkey. And so President Erdogan then said, remember your forefathers, how they came here to war against us? We sent them back in body bags. President Erdogan was being specific about those who were trying to hurt him, his country, those white supremacists. He was referring to the manifesto of Brenton Tarrant. And what did most of the Australians do? Oh, look, he's insulting us. He's threatening war against us. Taking the man out of context, because they really, those white supremacists, majority of them in Australia, the white supremacists, they actually want war against Turkey, against the Muslims. And so they took President Erdogan out of context, typical context in order to justify their war against Muslims, to advocate war, because they, most of them, complicitly believe in Brenton Tarrant's manifesto, even if they don't admit it.